Hi, everybody. I am super excited to have our next guest on. He's been a dear friend of mine for a super long time. He's been a really successful entrepreneur ever since I've known him, from being involved at the Grand Hyatt in Hong Kong to being the general manager of one of the first real designer boutique hotels in Hong Kong at a very young age, to somehow being one of the owners of Celav in Singapore, successfully exiting that business, and now the owner of the number one caviar business in Asia, Nomad Caviar. So it's really exciting. You know, I'm always interested in hearing people's journeys on how they went from where they were to where they are, and the challenges that ensued that they had to overcome to be successful. It's not always as glamorous as it seems, although I do think in this video, I do make it sound fairly glamorous. One thing I want to say, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors, which is Global Mortgage Group, www.gmg.asia. Details are in the link. We're an international real estate financing brokerage that helps our investors globally pull cash out of their home equity for personal use. Secondly, it's America Mortgages. We're the world's only U.S. bank focused on foreign nationals living overseas, and we're the only bank in the U.S. that has loan officers overseas. So again, I appreciate everybody's support. Please like, subscribe, tell all your friends. We have a lot more interesting guests that are going to be coming up. So hope you enjoy this interview with Jason. And with that said, here's Jason. Jason Cohen from Hong Kong.
Thanks for having me, Donald. It's good to be here.
Welcome to Singapore. So,
thank you.
Listen, we've got an hour. We got a lot to pack into. You've lived, a pretty fulfilled life. So I guess let's kick it off. Tell us a little bit about, what you were like as a kid. Were you always an entrepreneur? And then I guess we'll lead into kind of your first taste of being an entrepreneur, and then we'll take it from there.
Sure. My first job was not entrepreneurial at all. It was with Grand Hyatt Hong Kong, and I started in the sales and marketing department. I did that for 2 years. I believe it was from 2001 to 2003. And I was grateful for the job, and I love the hotel business, and but I knew very quickly that that's not what I wanted to do. And I knew very quickly that, I'd be a lot more fulfilled probably doing something for myself. So as I said, I did that for 2 years. And then I got a phone call out of the blue telling me that a lady called Yen Wong, who built Jia Hotel and Jia Restaurant Group in Hong Kong, was looking for a GM for her first hotel. And I believe that was in 2000, and I think I was there 2003 to 2007. And, she was 26 years old at the time. I was similar age, and I got this phone call, and I went and spent 2 hours with her. And by the end of that meeting, she said, would you like to come and operate Jia for me? And
you were the GM of Jia.
I was the GM of Jia.
Oh my God.
26 years old. And I was really underqualified for that.
I remember it was the corner hotel in Causeway Bay.
Irving Street and Pennington Street.
It was kind of like
Philippe Starck.
Philippe Starck-ish.
Philippe Starck Hotel.
It was a Philippe Starck. God, I totally remember this.
And Yen was, kind enough to give me that opportunity. And, it was a tiny hotel. It had it was either 54 or 57 rooms, but it made a massive impact. And as much as I wasn't the entrepreneur of that business, it felt very entrepreneurial because we were starting from scratch. Everything it was a young team. I mean, the owner was the same age as me, and, the CFO was like 27 years old. There was no one really adult-like. It was a bunch of kids just trying to put this thing together, and we did a really good job. Marina Boulevard was a consultant for it, so she was kind of like, the person with more experience and helped ground all us kids in creating this.
Because I remember there was the restaurant in the basement, and then Marina would be there. It was a cool place.
Yeah, it was great.
And you know what? like, anything interesting stories? What did you find just really stressful about that journey?
I mean, as I said, I mean, I really was not qualified for the job. I mean, I was a sales and marketing manager at Grand Hyatt Hong Kong. And then suddenly I was given this opportunity to kind of open and manage this very kind of cool, internationally recognized boutique hotel. And, I mean, everything, getting my head around a P&L. I mean, I'd never had to deal with a P&L and be responsible for it completely. So, the whole thing, the 3 years or 3.5 years that I was with the group, it was just every little bit was just trial and error, trial and error, trial and error. But we got it right. I mean, as I said, tiny hotel, super successful, made a massive impact. And what was really nice for me was that, a lot of these big GMs of like Grand Hyatts and Park Hyatts and Shangri-Las and Peninsulas, some of the world's most recognized hotels, these GMs I'd invite them over for lunch. And so for me, it was amazing because I was like a sponge trying to learn from these people. And that really was the beginning of my entrepreneurial life.
Interesting. And is the hotel still around now?
The hotel's not. So I left in 2007. I believe in 2009 or 2010, Yen sold the property and did very, very well. And I'm not sure actually what it is now. I believe Lanson Place was just around the corner, and they're going to they were going to redevelop the whole thing, but I'm not sure what ended up happening with it.
Oh God, I didn't realize you were the GM there. I'm sure I probably would have seen you.
Yeah.
And then what happened? What was your next?
So from there, I mean, I realized, Yen, Yen, I mean, it was one hotel at the time. She went on to build a massive restaurant group and have another hotel in Shanghai. But, it was one hotel, one owner, and there wasn't really like a career trajectory. And I knew at that stage that I kind of wanted to do something for myself. And it was in 2007, the really great family in Hong Kong. I'm childhood friends with John Hui, and his mom and my mom are best friends. But they had a small property on the corner of Fleming Road and Jaffe Road in Wan Chai, which you now know as the Fleming because you've stayed there many times. But at the time, it was a really rundown, beat up kind of property, and I believe it was staff accommodation for another hotel group. And so John had recently moved back to Hong Kong and he wanted to do something, and they thought it was a good idea to turn that corner property into what is now the Fleming Hotel. And that was really the beginning of my being in business for myself. They came and said, hey, can you come and help us with this? So I took it as an opportunity to set up my own company and basically become a consultant for the Hui family. And it's something that I still do today, which I'm really proud of. I think we together have built and positioned and renovated a super nice, 4-star boutique hotel property. It's very successful. It has been from day one. And I think it's probably one of the most recognized, small boutique hotels in Asia.
100%. We're going to get into how amazing this hotel is because I've stayed there a lot. But so just put things into concept. What years were this? So 2007?
So I believe that was 2007. I left JAR and started my own company, and my first client was the Hui family. And at the same time, simultaneous to that, I became the managing director in Asia for Hip Hotels Media Group.
Okay.
Which, I don't know if you remember, but you remember these coffee table books called Hip Hotels?
Yep.
And Herbert Ipmer, the founder of that, I had met through working at JAR, and we became very good friends. And, he was the creator of these books, and he wanted to branch out into online bookings, music, media, and he asked me to help him in Asia, basically work with all the hotels. And so for the first couple of years, that's what I did. I focused on the Fleming Hotel, and I was kind of running this hotel.
So let's talk about Fleming Hotel. Love this place. So was it a tear down? Was it refurb?
It was a refurb.
Okay.
And if you remember when we first, we renovated about 6 years ago into what it is today. But prior to that, it was probably a 4-star, very simple business boutique hotel.
100%. It was white, right? Outside?
Yeah, very beige, very white. And, from my perspective, it was quite a safe and boring choice. It worked. It was successful. It targeted a business traveler, but there was nothing kind of special and unique about it. And then, like all properties, every 7 to 10 years, you really need to renovate properly. we went to John's father, Mr. Hoy, and we said, we want some money to renovate this thing. And he said, what do you want to do? We laid out our plan, and he was supportive, very supportive on it. And I think, he's got a very beautiful property now that he's really proud of. And as I said, it's been profitable. They all through COVID. I mean, COVID was very, very challenging, obviously, for all hotels in Hong Kong. The only choice was to really become a COVID hotel, which the family absolutely did not want to do. And so, we did our best through a very challenging period with staycations and just doing things, that we
100%.
could do.
100%. So when you first, what did you do for them when you first joined them in 2007?
I mean, I was basically, the official title was like, I was their owner's rep, right?
Okay.
But it was really just, I'm a consultant. So anything, they didn't have a background in hotels. I mean, they're this big property family, but they had no background in hotels. And so, because of the nature of the family being in property, they were really good with fit outs and construction budgets. And I was good at operations and sales and marketing. And so I took that responsibility on. And even today, that's kind of how we split it up. I still look after sales, marketing, operations. And John, as the owner, looks after anything to do with, construction, finance, spending money. But, never had any problems. It's a good little business.
And how long did it, it is, so for everybody who doesn't know, the Fleming Hotel is in Wan Chai on Fleming Road and Jaffe Road, Fleming Do and Jaffe Do. It is a gorgeous, over-spec'd, I would say, boutique hotel designed with a nautical theme.
Star Ferry.
With relation to the Star Ferry.
Yeah.
And it's like beautiful smell. Everything's really designed. Great beds. I have trouble sleeping in hotels, no matter how nice they are. And I sleep really well at the Fleming, so I'm always there. But how long did that take to refurbish?
So we had the idea, and we got the approval. And John's father, Mr. Hoy, said, can you come up with some designers? And in my mind, I always wanted to work with Ilsa Crawford is one of my favorite designers. She's designed a lot of the Soho houses in around the world, but she had also recently done the Cathay Pacific First Class Lounge, and beautiful work. So John and I spoke with Ilsa. We had a contract, and then at the very last minute, Mr. Hoy basically said, I'm not really comfortable with using a UK-based designer. I really would prefer you find someone local. And I was stuck, I was really stuck because we had our hearts set on using Ilsa. And then I happened to be, just flicking through a copy of Wallpaper, and I saw a little tiny write-up. It was only about that big, and it was about a company called A Work of Substance in Hong Kong. And I literally, started Googling them, had never heard of them, found, some bits of work that they have done. And I just literally went to the website, had a look at it. I thought, wow, these guys have done some cool stuff. And I cold called them. And the Max, who's the owner and the guy who designed the Fleming, the most recent form, is become a very close friend. But we literally cold called him, and we said, can you come down and have lunch with us?
What a cool story.
He had never done a hotel. He always wanted to do a hotel. So we said, okay, we'll pitch for it. He pitched for it. He gave us a quote, and we basically just said, there's no way we're going to pay that. If you want to do this, this is what we'll give you, because you've never done a hotel. And, he nailed it. He did a great job. And
Super.
I think for me, what Max did amazingly well is that I like staying in hotels and places that have a reference to its locale, a reference to location, right? And I think his idea of basing the design on the Star Ferry as an iconic design feature of Hong Kong was ingenious.
Totally. Because otherwise, if you wanted to stay in a hotel if you stay in Bali, it's Balinese design. You stay in Phuket or in Thailand, it's certain design. But in Hong Kong, what would you use as a reference? That point is
difficult, right?
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah, and he nailed it. He created something that is not only beautiful but also timeless. And that's what's most important, I think, about a hotel, right?
100%.
It needs to be timeless.
And for those who like the smell of cedarwood, the rooms have a cedarwood smell to it, which I love. Awesome. And so you're still doing that to today. It's a great property, super successful, great location. God, I feel like I'm your PR guy now.
You can be, yeah. Some more caviar.
Yeah, and then what's next? Like what?
So it was around 2010, 2009, 2010, this opportunity to create something on the roof of the Marina Bay Sands came about. Yeah, I mean, it kind of came out of the blue. We were essentially given the opportunity to pitch for, the Sky Park at Marina Bay Sands and to try and create a restaurant and nightclub business. More than 100, companies, I believe, tendered for this piece of real estate, and we won it with the Coup d'etat brand.
But taking a step back, and I know this is kind of quite a messy, complicated story, but we don't want to get into it. But Coup d'etat is started in Bali. Now, were you involved in that?
No, I wasn't. We were never involved in Coup d'etat Bali, but okay. One of my partners was good friends with the owners, well, the creators of Coup d'etat Bali, a guy called Arthur Chandros, who co-founded Coup d'etat Bali, and we went to him with a license. We wanted to license the brand from Bali and bring it to Singapore, which he agreed to. And it is a very messy and complicated story, but a couple of years later, we ended up having to rebrand everything into Celav, and it stands today as.
Was it ever Coup d'etat here?
Yeah.
Oh, it started.
First 2 years was
okay.
First 3 years was Coup d'etat.
Okay, and for those out there, I'm sure everybody knows, Celav is the at the top of the Marina Bay Sands. It's globally renowned, great view, overpriced drinks.
Good drinks.
Good drinks. But it's legendary. So, I mean, you've got the gods of opportunity seem to be smiling on you. You're nailing incredible opportunities. It says a lot about who you are. Great opportunities that you've been able to be offered, and that turn out to be massive successes. So, and what was that like? I mean, you're on top of a casino.
I mean, it's obvious now.
And also, before we get into it, because I'm quite curious, what was your role in this?
So we were 4 partners, and we had one of the partners assume the responsibility as CEO, and we essentially supported him with everything. My role was really much more on the business development side in those early stages. Events, partnership opportunities, strategic alliances, that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's obviously it's obvious that it's successful now. But in those early days, I mean, Marina Bay Sands wasn't Marina Bay Sands. I mean, at that time there were 3,000 empty hotel rooms, and a whole mall that wasn't finished, and 2-3 restaurants open. But you could see that Singapore was ready for something like that.
Yeah.
And, I can't remember the exact numbers, but say our budget was to do $1 in the first few months, we ended up doing $3.
Right.
And so we could just see the opportunity,
So now I'm going to tangent a little bit to kind of echo what you were just saying. So I, regretfully kind of stumbled into an F&B business a while back.
Which one?
Not a time for this conversation.
Sure.
But I ended up meeting a Singaporean fellow who opened a Japanese restaurant in Marina Bay Sands. I forget the name, but he's not a restaurateur. And like you said, like they couldn't give these stores away. This I opened a Japanese restaurant, and it became so popular that he like franchised it. But he was saying during those heyday of 2010 and 13, China, was a big client for everybody. He sold I'm going to forget the name, the Louis the 13, whatever the expensive Remy cognac. He sold so many Louis the 13th that I guess it's owned by LVMH, or like he sold so many that he was invited to Cannes. And he was telling me the story of him and his wife, Singaporean couple, older, walking on the red carpet and everybody screaming at them. And it's like, and Brad Pitt was behind him, right? And they're like, "What are we doing here?" And I mean, the point I'm trying to make is, I don't think people can fathom how it went from uncertain this was a good idea to the best idea ever in a very short period of time.
Yeah, and that was absolutely the case for us, that everything to do with getting that project started and getting the licensing agreement started, getting the money together to do it. It was tough. It was challenging, and then to see it become very quickly something so successful was just an amazing feeling. And I've never been, I've not really been a part of many businesses like that, where it's just, you had a budget to do $1 and it ends up doing $3 straight away. Usually it's like this grind to get there, but not in the case of that. It really was successful from the beginning, and it was great fun. I used to, at those early times, it was just 4 friends having a good time, inviting 10, 15 of our friends for dinner every night we were in town, and, partying, having fun, and trying to make some money at the same time.
Yeah. And did it, like, I mean, not to give away any secret sauce, but I would assume the casino would start raising rent because you're doing well and became harder to make money,
Marina Bay Sands are a good landlord. We had a long lease signed, but they're a very good landlord. And yeah, look, all landlords want to make more money, right? But they're fair. They're a fair landlord, and we had very good relationship with them, especially at that time. So, we never really had any issues. It's, and we had plenty of issues, but not issues with the landlord. But yeah, it's, everyone thinks of the restaurant and nightclub business as this super glamorous business, walking down the red carpet in Cannes, invited by Moet Hennessy. And, but it's, there's a whole daytime that goes on, behind it that no one sees, which is very unglamorous.
And any interesting stories that's fit for public consumption that that was, or maybe some of the challenges?
We had, one of the most memorable nights for sure was to host, we had Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, and will.i.am all there at the same time on a Beats tour, Beats by Dr. Dre tour.
Oh my God.
And the night before that, they were at Dragon Eye in Hong Kong, which Darren Shaw actually helped put together.
I might have been there on the Hong Kong.
I think you may have.
I was there. There were 8 million people in a 5,000 square foot disco, and I'm like, there's Snoop Dogg. I can't.
Yeah, so and then obviously the F1 events, and for many years we hosted SAP's annual party, which SAP is a software service provider. But they used to throw some amazing parties, and they'd always get, DJs and performers. They had internationally recognized artists and, massive DJs, sort of close their event parties.
Okay.
But, yeah, we had some great times there.
Oh man, you've gone through the Shaolin temple of FMB life. You've started, from the bottom, and okay. So I know some of the story. You were able to exit your position. And now we're going to get into the interesting bits. So tell us, how did this, what you can say, you're now a host, you're a wholesale and retail distributor of a caviar brand. But let's walk through the early days.
So we exited. We sold Celav to a majority stake to a PE fund in, I think it was in 2014. And then we all exited together just now in December 2023. During COVID, like a lot of people, I was stuck at home, and I was stuck in Hong Kong. And, we were never locked up in Hong Kong, but there was not that much to do. And so like a lot of people, we just started, everyone was hosting dinner parties, and I have a huge love of caviar. And I started, having a lot of caviar and hosting dinner parties, and our mutual friend, DG, Dan, he ended up having a contact with a farm in China, and he was able to bring in these massive 1.7 kilo tins. And at that time, that farm, that was all they were willing to sell. And so, I went to one of his dinners and he had this caviar, and I said to him, hey, can I get some of this? And so the next time he ordered, I got one of these tins and I hosted a dinner, and I realized very quickly that this was something that could be fun to do. And Dan and I had a conversation, and we started bringing it in just for friends and family. We weren't making any money. It would literally arrive in the office, and then people would come to the office, pick up their caviar, and take it home.
And are they literally like scooping it into a plastic?
1.7 kilos, yay big, and enough for like 30, 40 people to sit around a dining table. And what happened was, everyone who went to one of those dinners hosted by a person, everyone wanted to buy their own tin. And we started buying so much that the caviar owner rang us and said, the caviar farm owner rang us and said, what are you doing? And I was like, nothing. We're literally, where it arrives at the office, people pick it up and they host their own dinner parties. And he said, look, hotels and restaurants around the world are closed. My business is dying. You seem to have a very good network in Hong Kong. Can you do something? And, all the Celavis pretty much around the world at that point were closed. Singapore was closed. Shanghai was closed. Taipei was closed. Tokyo was closed. The only one open was Dubai. And I had time, and I thought, why not give this a go? This could be a fun thing. And it's the first time that I've ever been involved in anything where, we didn't write a business plan. We didn't really think about it too hard. Dan said to me, do you want to do this? And I was like, yeah, I want to do it. I think I'll have a go. And he said, well, I want to be a part of it too. I said, okay, well, why don't you take this amount? I'll take this amount. And let's see what we can do. And so I started researching caviar companies, and I started trying to, and I realized that nearly all the caviar companies in the world, and there are some amazing brands out there like Petrosian and Caviari and Caviar House and Prunier, but they're all kind of positioned the same way, They're beautifully positioned, but it's all just very, very elegant and very, very upmarket. And because of the nature of my work in the nightclub and restaurant industry, I know a lot of the 2, 3-star Michelin chefs, 1-star, 2-star, 3-star Michelin chefs, but I also know a lot of these young, cool kids who are just making pizza so I wanted to kind of come up with a brand that could resonate with anyone at any age and make it accessible. And so, I came up with the name Nomad. I started researching caviar, and I realized that, caviar, before it became, the food of royalty, was actually a food given to merchant seamen. And the reason being is you could salt it heavily and store it on boats for long periods of time. It's filled with protein, zinc, selenium, magnesium. But, sturgeon were abundant. And so this whole concept of travel and merchant seamen sort of resonated with me. And that's how it kind of came about. And I rang someone up and said, hey,
I didn't know there was a story behind Nomad. So that's the story. We have a little bit of a history lesson on caviar. It is not the food of kings and royalty. It was actually
originally
it was a food for proletariat ocean-going workers.
Absolutely. And then as sturgeon supplies started diminishing, it became this very expensive food item. And so what we did is I just took with the background I have of kind of boutique hotels and restaurants and nightclubs, I very much took that approach to the marketing and positioning of, what is perceived to be this, super, super, elegant but slightly kind of boring food product, and just tried to kind of make it a little bit more accessible, more modern and cool. And eat it in abundance.
Right. So right now, we'll get into the business a little bit, but it's clearly sort of a B to C. So you're using a lot of social media. You go to the website, they see the beautiful pictures on Instagram. They go to the website, they order it, it gets delivered. Why did you choose that model?
At that time during COVID, it was the obvious model. And I say it in the sense that, we got lucky. I mean, we didn't think about it too hard. And, I just basically called up a friend. I said, hey, I need a website. He's like, let me put you in touch with someone. That person ended up creating the brand with me. She built the website. And, you know, it was obvious because of COVID that this direct-to-consumer model was going to grow because no one was really going out. Places were shut. Everyone was ordering food in from chefs. And so why not do that for caviar? So we built a website. We have a Shopify platform. It's very simple. We actually started with Wix. We had a super basic version of the website. The only thing you could buy was caviar in, at that time, 2 sizes, which was, I think, 500 grams, 3 sizes, 500 grams, 1 kilo, and 1.7 kilos. But now if you go to the website, we've switched over to Shopify. We have a lot more products. We have our own Balik style salmon. We have merch. We have vodka, sake. We're currently doing a promotion with Ruinart champagne. But yeah, we are an 80% direct to consumer. You go to nomadcaviar.com, you place your order, you pay, we deliver the next day.
Amazing. One of the things about caviar is I've, been lucky enough to know you and try some of this. It's expensive, but actually it's not as expensive as you think, right? And if you're having a dinner party, this is obviously not an everyday food. You might have clients that eat this every day. I'm sure you do actually.
Yeah.
But it has such umami that you can make a simple pasta, do a dollop, and the social impression that it creates is like, wow, I'm getting caviar, and maybe in 50 years, caviar is just like ham, right? Maybe not, but
I think with caviar, right, the reality is in our business, it's not that expensive. And the reason being is because we don't do any small tins. So our whole concept is price per gram is cheaper from us, but you have to buy a larger quantity. And that, by doing it that way, we're able to keep the prices low.
Yeah. Amazing. So tell us, what countries are you in?
We started in Hong Kong, obviously, because I'm from Hong Kong, and because of my experience in Singapore with Celav, we brought it to Singapore. I think we started Hong Kong in November 2020, and I opened Singapore in November 2022, I believe it was. Philippines was last year, and we're now waiting on the final approval to launch in Vietnam. But we're having discussions about Malaysia. We're having discussions about Japan. We're having discussions about Thailand. I really have a plan now that I left Celav in June 2024, June last year. So I have time. And so now I'm really focused on trying to scale it.
What about Australia?
Yeah, I went to Sydney. I was in Sydney a few months ago and had a good meeting about it. But I think for me, I want to try and be a little bit larger in Southeast Asia before we go to, these potentially larger markets.
Japan is just being ginormous.
The problem with Japan is I would love to do Japan, and I love going to Japan, but it's primarily a B2B market, and we are an 80% B2C business.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's fun, and and the nice thing about it is that there's no rush. Just do it with the good people, take our time, build it out slowly, and just try and be the leading B2C online caviar platform in Asia.
Which you are. Yeah. Caviar King of Asia. Nomad Caviar, everybody. Go check out the website. It's amazing stuff. And I know this because I have friends that love caviar, and you know who you are. And they call me and they say, hey, listen, Jason's stuff is the best.
Oh, good. I'm happy to hear that.
I'm like, well, that's because he puts MSG in it. And
no, only salt, no chemicals.
So what's next? Like what, actually, ironically, the first time I ever had caviar was your Nomad Caviar. You said that, the big thing is drinking sake with caviar. And suddenly sake is taken off. And like, I'm seeing Instagrams of people eating caviar with sake. If you're having caviar, sake goes really well,
and we have our own sake,
right,
that we do. We have a Nomad sake, but yeah, it's I think anything that's very crisp and very dry goes well with caviar. So,
and what has been like? What has been some of the challenges going into? These are everybody thinks Asia's like one big is a country, but it's actually these are all very separate countries, cultural differences, language differences, regulatory differences. Like, what's been some of the challenges navigating?
So in my naivety with in starting Nomad, I really thought that I could just have an office in Hong Kong and figure out, like, if someone was in New York, they could order on nomadcaviar.com and I could get it to New York within 2 to 3 days. That's really in my naivety what I thought. And then as I started getting into the business and sort of figuring out the licenses required, I realized that was impossible. And the reason being is that caviar is now a protected species, sturgeon fish. Sturgeon as a species is a protected species. It's illegal to fish. And so every time it leaves a border and arrives at a border, it needs what's called CITES approval. CITES is the body that, protects endangered species, flora and fauna globally. And so, it is quite challenging because, it's not so easy to scale because you need an operation in every city. So, Singapore was easier for me because the laws are very clear. I'm used to doing business here. And I would say Singapore and Hong Kong are the most similar markets in Asia. So Singapore was kind of a no-brainer once I learned the mistakes I made in Hong Kong. But, taking it somewhere like the Philippines or Vietnam, it's pretty impossible to do without a local partner. And so, I've got some very good local partners in the markets where we're exploring. And
should we give a shout out to Wendy? Hey, Wendy. Wendy Puyat in Manila.
Yep, Wendy's there and she's doing great. But it is challenging, and the nice thing about it, and a lot of people don't know this, but 75 to 85% of the world's caviar is now farmed in China. And because I'm based in Hong Kong and the farms are close, we're able to get a lot of support.
And what about the China market?
China market's complicated.
China's a lot harder to do business there than people think. It's a big market, but
yeah, it's a huge market, and it's this. Just like Southeast Asia, I mean, you think Vietnam and Taiwan are different, or Southeast Asia and Greater China. If you think Taiwan and Vietnam are different, I mean, within China, East, South, North, and West, they're so different. But, the main thing in China is that because the farms have got such a big presence themselves within China, they kind of have the monopoly on domestic sales. And I'm not necessarily sure I want to.
You would have any edge. Yeah. Just as a side note, I remember in my horribly disastrous F&B adventure, we had some restaurants in China, and our head of operations was from Beijing, and we had a store in Shanghai and one in Shenzhen, and man, they did not get along. And it was, again, like, I'm Chinese, and I'm like, aren't you guys all this, and it was it's difficult. It's difficult. So
we had a Celav in Shanghai too, and that project gave me the gray hair that I have today. It was challenging beyond belief. Doing that, building that project out.
Well, listen, congrats to all your state. Like, what's what's happening next?
I don't know. I'm kind of buying some Bitcoin and trying to figure out how to expand Nomad.
If anybody wants to know about dollar cost averaging, Jason's been buying Bitcoin every Friday for the last few years. Yeah. So have I, actually, after that conversation. So I'm a big fan. Well, listen, this is great. Like I said, I'm you hear the last 40 minutes. Jason, he's like, cool. Looks like there's no stress in the world.
Oh, there's stress.
They're like starting something from nothing and making it successful. You can't believe, and you've done it like 3-4 times already. I'm still on my first one, and man, it's really stressful. It's kind of like that picture that goes around Instagram of like the little iceberg on top that everybody sees, but underneath it's like,
it's challenging,
brutal,
right?
Brutal. But well, this has been super interesting. All power to you. Thanks for your time. I hope the audience, got a little bit of flavor of what it's like to be an entrepreneur. But I also wanted to tell the story that, it's not it. Although I think I did make it sound pretty glamorous, it's naturally not all that glamorous. It gets dirty. You have to deal with people, different. It's just a lot of stress that impacts other areas of your life. Your hair. But listen, for all those out there, I'm going to put the details for Nomad Caviar in the description. Please support Jason in his quest to become the global monopoly on B2C caviar business. It's amazing stuff. Good price point. Yeah. Thanks, man.
Thanks for having me. It's been
Awesome.
great. Thanks.
It's been super fun. Well, thank you for everybody. Till next time, please tune in. Tell all your friends to subscribe to The Real Asia Show. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, dude.
Thanks, buddy.